When NASA astronaut and veteran of 2 space missions Sunita Williams returns to Earth next week, she'll have already completed 9 months at the International Space Station. The 59-year-old Williams and 62-year-old Butch Wilmore have been stranded in space since June 5, 2024, a visit that was expected to last only 8 days. Now, as SpaceX Dragon prepares to bring them back, concerns have risen over their safety and health. So what happens to the crew during such prolonged stays? Astronauts in the past have stayed much longer, so is this any different? In fact, last year, 2 Russian cosmonauts set a record for the longest continuous stay for 374 days before returning home safely. So how risky it is? I spoke to a few senior space scientists in India and they tell me that it's difficult to say because the space agencies rarely make this data available. So we attempted to break it down for you. What happens to the human body after such prolonged stay in space? Firstly, microgravity or the weightlessness reduces the bone density, causes muscle atrophy and fluctuations in body fluid distribution. While most of it can be recovered over time, some effects may persist. Now, scientists are still trying to fully understand the changes which occur in the human cells and tissues due to microgravity and the post-recovery phase. But it's not a new experience for a veteran like Sunita Williams, who has spent a total of 322 days in space over the course of her 2 previous missions, one lasting about 195 days in 2006 and 7, and the second lasting for about 128 days in 2012. With 50 hours and 40 minutes, she is also the second on the list of total cumulative spacewalk time by a female astronaut. However, the key worry is the radiation exposure in space, unlike on Earth where people are protected by its magnetic field. While the ISS module is designed with built-in protection to limit the ionizing radiation from space, scientists say it's not as safe as one would like it to be. Astronauts are typically exposed to ionizing radiation in doses which are equivalent to 150 to 6,000 X-rays. So the crew is also required to sign an undertaking before embarking on a mission like that. Now, noted Indian astrophysicist Dr. P. Srikumar tells me that nominal radiation is always present, but it's a cumulative effect that can be damaging for health. Every extra day in space increases the risk of radiation exposure exceeding the normal levels, which is always a concern, especially when the solar activity is high and there are solar flares. But he also says that the present case is not an emergency situation, otherwise the astronauts would have already been brought back. For over 2 decades, over 270 people from 21 countries have lived and worked aboard the ISS, which provides continuous year-round life support and habitation, making research breakthroughs not possible on Earth. Now, the ISS has been orbiting the Earth at an altitude of about 370 to 460 kilometers since 1998. Also, it's not the first time that humans have stayed in space for that long, and NASA monitors their health parameters regularly and ensures the standards are met. Although there is definitely some impact on the health, like loss in bone density, some say that it's not permanent. Now, noted space scientist Professor Jayanth Murthy tells me that the future missions like those to Mars will require astronauts to spend even more time in space. So at this stage, scientists are also focusing on gathering all the possible information on any potential health risk without compromising the astronauts' safety. Last year, 2 Russian cosmonauts returned home safely after creating a record for the longest continuous stay at ISS for 374 days. In fact, one of them holds a record for the longest cumulative time in space at 1,111 days in orbit in the 5 missions. So yes, it is difficult to say, but what we definitely know is that the space economy is expanding and long-term ambitions to travel deep into space grow. The need to understand the health risks in space will become more important than ever. The future planetary missions such as those to Mars will require a much longer stay in space, and now there is a renewed interest in commercial space flights too.